Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back to another episode. This is Frank Hagan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Thanks to you who've tuned in and been tuned in the past, and thanks to those who are now subscribed. This is, after all, the first step to building a loyal base of followers. And as you know, when you subscribe, or should know, is that ensures you get every episode when they're released. Though they should be downloaded to however you get your podcasts. And thanks to those who have referred others to the podcast as well. We appreciate that. In addition, thank you for the questions and comments that people have emailed. Actually, people have seen me in person and have mentioned things to me as well. I guess we're going to kind of backtrack a little bit today and move forward as well. As we've said in the past, no matter your business, we're always much further ahead, devoting our time, energy, and talents towards existing clients, customers, rather than focusing on attracting new ones. Because when you focus attention on your current stable of paying customers, you benefit by becoming more effective at serving them. You learn about them, you get better positioned to sell to them and know their wants and their needs. How do we know this? Certainly business experts for years have told us in countless publications, articles and whatnot, books, as well as live programs, that we're better off focusing attention on the clients we have as opposed to trying to attract new ones. Not that we shouldn't be looking for new clients, but it's just more effective to work and service the clients we have and devote our time and resources there than it is to trying to get new clients. I've heard statistics that it's 5 times more expensive to get a new client than it is to continue to service the clients we have. But I think more importantly, it's been our experience that we're just better off working with the clients that we have. I know in my law practice, it was much more effective to work with the clients I had, and it took a lot of work to get new clients. Likewise, with respect to AmSpirit Business Connections, it does take a lot of work to get a new member within the organization, and not as much work, nearly as much work, to keep the ones that we have satisfied. We've had members that have been around since the 90s. So we certainly know this. While in our hearts we know that existing clients or customers are the highest and best use of our resources, our intuition tells us to always be open to attracting new ones. And I think that instinct kind of serves us well. After all, no business environment is stable. You can't stake a business long term on clients that you have right now, because clients go out of business. Clients are acquired. They occasionally change vendors for whatever reason, and they've been known to bring services in-house. Things that you once did for them, they'll hire somebody to take on full-time or part-time. It's a fact that existing clients are the backbone of a great business, but new clients, however, are vital to the long-term health of your business. Well, the same is true of networks. Strong existing relationships make for a great network. New relationships, however, are vital to the long-term health of your network. While we hope that our relationships last a lifetime, we know that they don't. People within our networks move. People within our networks pass away. Some people in networks just start to run in different circles. So certainly focus on the relationships that you do have, but know that meeting new people should be an important part of your ongoing networking activities. For many of us, and I lump myself in there because I've been there, but for many of us, many of you, meeting new people is an anxious situation. Whether you're introduced or you introduce yourself, you plunge into and have to initiate and maintain interesting conversations to kind of get that relationship started. Let's face it, whether you're a beginner or an expert or somewhere in between, meeting new people can be a daunting task. There's a lot of energy that goes into it, certainly a lot more energy than carrying on a conversation or interacting with somebody that you already know. In fact, we've already spent a couple episodes dealing with this. In episode 11, which was Networking Small Talk, we devoted an entire episode to tips and tricks and ideas on how to be more effective with respect to small talk. And then a few weeks later, 6 or 7 weeks later, we followed up in episode 17 with Networking Conversation Carriers Part 1. I called it Part 1 because there'll probably be a follow-up to it at some other point. But in this particular episode, what we did was I shared with you things that have been shared with me, people that had responded and gave me the questions that they used to keep small talk going. And again, as a brief primer on episode 11, the key to small talk is not having interesting things to say. The key to small talk is getting the other person talking and you being interested in what they have to say. So that's really kind of a thumbnail of that program. I encourage you to listen to both of those to get yourself better with respect to small talk and give yourself some ideas on questions that you should ask. Interestingly enough, there was a question that came from that, and the question that somebody indicated from that, and again, going back and touching on the program, more or less the types of questions we need to be asking to generate small talk, getting the other person talking, are open-ended questions. Questions that require something more than a yes or a no or a single word to answer. And the follow-up question that I got from that is do all the questions, when it comes to small talk, do all the questions need to be open-ended? And my simple answer to that is no. In thinking about it, there certainly is value in what I'll call the close-ended questions to try and get the conversation started. So in preparing for this episode, I reflected on some of my small talk conversations, and I have these literally daily. So there's a treasure trove of examples and experiences that I've had with respect to small talk, and they just keep coming and coming and coming, and before today's over, I'll have 3 more conversations that are small talk, some with people that I already know and some with people that I'm just meeting for the first time. But I reflected back on my conversations and I realized that, yeah, I do have a lot of open-ended questions that I'll use to get people talking. But I do notice that naturally have some close-ended questions as well, some questions that are short little questions that have a yes or no sort of an answer. And in thinking about it, how you need to look at this is almost look at this as like verbal boxing. Yeah, boxing. 2 grown adults with baggy shorts pulled up over their navels, beating one another senseless with big leather gloves. But at any rate, boxers prepare extensively for their fights. They choreograph their initial moves, which are essentially a series of cautiously thrown, slower, delicate punches, known as jabs. Then the boxer's subsequent actions are determined by how his opponent responds to these jabs. In other words, a boxer uses his jabs as a means to create an opportunity to land a knockout punch or open up the opportunity for something that's more than just a little tap on the gloves or on the face or to the midsection. Now, hopefully our conversations are not as confrontational as a boxing match, but there are similarities. For example, as we prepare, as we have conversations, we almost need to start with jab-like questions. If you stop and think about it, yes, open-ended questions are great. How did you get into this line of work? It's a great question for getting somebody talking, but if that's the first question that's coming out of your mouth when you're meeting somebody new, it's going to seem a little awkward. So we need to arm ourselves, in addition to open-ended questions, with a series of jabs that help set up the people we're talking to for making the open-ended questions seem that much more natural. So to be effective at small talk, not only do we need to have a small arsenal of open-ended questions that we can use, but we also carefully need to prepare and always have readily available, a handful of non-threatening yet basic fact-gathering questions. These are our verbal jabs and should be relatively simple to answer in a word or two. And then depending upon the answers to our verbal jabs, we either follow up with another jab or look for an opening to pose a more in-depth question. Then when the opportunity comes, our verbal punch is that in-depth question, the one that requires the other party to elaborate and give us a chance to determine what our next move might be. Maybe it's another series of jabs, or maybe it's another punch. With the proper mental preparation, this whole process becomes almost rhythmic for us. Let's work through an example. You meet somebody and you have the initial introductions of exchanging names and the polite pleasantries that come with that. And then we kind of launch into this little game plan. You throw a jab. What do? Now that just requires a quick answer. I'm a financial advisor, I'm a coach, I'm an accountant. And then what you would follow up with would be another jab. How long have you been doing that? Again, requires a quick answer. 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, whatever it might be. And then you might follow up with another jab. That hasn't been that long. What did you do before that? Again, you've kind of set them up with another jab, and they can answer that. Well, I've been a financial advisor for 2 years, but before that I did this. And from there, you can launch into not a jab, but a punch. That's an interesting change. How did that transition occur? Now, when you ask them how that transition occurred, it's not a yes or no. It's not a 1 or 2 word answer. It's something where there's going to be a story there. There's something they're going to elaborate as to how they made the change. And again, you need to be interested in that. You need to listen. You need to listen for clues of things that you can follow up with other questions on, ways that you can help them, so on and so forth. Here's another example. You've met somebody, you've exchanged the polite pleasantries, the names and all that stuff, and perhaps your first question to them, again a jab, is this your first time to this event? And you let them speak and see what they have to say. It might be something where it's like, no, I've been here many times, and then you might follow up with another jab, or what they might say is, yes, this is my first time, we just moved here, which sets them up for the question of, okay, where did you come from? Where did you move from? And then you can kind of ask, okay, and again, this is the punch, this is to get them talking. How did you end up here? And there's going to be a story there. Somebody's going to have a story as to how they ended up in town. And then from there, that can morph off into lots of different directions about how they got here, what their position is, what their spouse does, interests, or whatever else might be. And those little offshoots will carry the conversation for really as long as you need to carry it. And again, you don't need to talk for hours with somebody, but if you can keep somebody talking 15, 20 minutes, and that's a decent conversation, and then move on to the next person or people. So to summarize, as we carefully listen to the answers to what I'll call our punches, and again, punches are those open-ended questions that get people talking, as we listen to what people are saying, and again, we have to be generally interested in those, we can size up the situation and determine whether another punch is in order, another open-ended question that'll keep them talking, or do we serve up another jab or two to maybe set up another open-ended question. Again, it can become somewhat rhythmic. I do want to encourage you to go back and listen to episode 11, Networking Small Talk, because towards the end of there, I give some ideas on how you can become better at small talk. And to quickly summarize those ideas, the first is to think about your small talk. Think about how it's going to work. Imagine in your mind as you're driving to an event or when you have idle time, imagine in your mind working through a conversation, how a conversation might go. Or do like I do, reflect on conversations that you've had if you've had some recently. The second thing with respect to small talk and getting better at it, with respect to these jab, jab, punch, punch, is practice. Practice. Don't be afraid of having conversations with the person who's your server at a restaurant or the person checking you out at the store. Engage in conversations with them. Engage in conversations with people and you'll get better at it. And then the final thing to get better at small talk and these jab punch, is to listen to other people. Listen to other people have small talk, and you'll start to notice that, yeah, they do have some great open-ended questions that get people talking, but they do set it all up with a series of little jabs. Jab, jab, punch, punch. Jab, jab, punch, punch. And then next time you're headed to that business function or the chamber after hours, remember, you're not there to work the room, you're there to box it. Jab, 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 punch. Finally, to wrap up, remember, AmSpirit Business Connections has a unique franchise opportunity that involves helping small business professionals become more successful through a referral-based networking program. It only involves a couple hours in the morning, a few days a week, and would be a great franchise for an attorney, accountant, realtor, business coach, or consultant of various kind to add on to what they're already doing and get better networked at the same time. Why just be a renter when you can own the building, right? Why just be in a business network when you can own the business network? So if you or someone you know would like to learn more, please contact me using the email at the end of this podcast or the one we've provided in the show notes.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.